Welcome back. Attorney Andrew Bethel here again to discuss some spicy politics. Last week, we discussed the Democratic Party's policy proposals for a potential Harris-Walz administration, focusing primarily on estate taxes, upping capital gains taxes, removing the stepped-up tax basis, and the removal of like-kind exchanges, also known as 1031 exchanges. If you haven't watched that video, I highly recommend you do so after watching today's. It's not necessary to understand today's video and what the Republicans are proposing, but it doesn't hurt to know what each side is thinking. Today, we're going over the Republican Party's policy platform for a Trump-Vance administration with a little bit of Project 2025 sprinkled in. Yes, I've already done a video on a few aspects of Project 2025, so I'll link to that video in the corner and the description, but I'll discuss the relevant information today as well. Also, I have had folks point out that the Heritage Foundation, authors of Project 2025, is not the Republican Party, and therefore it's not fair to discuss both together, especially now that Trump is distancing himself from Project 2025 as his campaign began to receive some more, shall we say, negative feedback. However, the Heritage Foundation is an influential think tank. Just who do you think recommends which judges to appoint where? And when it comes to actually writing legislation, lobbying and policy proposals from think tanks are influential on exactly what makes its way into these bills voted on by Congress in the first place. Thus, while yes, the Project 2025 is not the Republican Party's official party platform, those sort of policy proposals do not occur in a vacuum only to be ignored by those tasked with actually writing legislation. So, in that regard, I think it's fair game to discuss. All right, with that overly long preamble out of the way, let's dive into the Republican Party's platform for 2024. Don't forget to like and subscribe because there's more politicking and estate planning discussions coming. Share the video with your mom, and thank you very much for watching. As with the Democrats, let's start with the state taxes or death taxes. The Republican platform, interestingly enough, does not explicitly mention changes to estate or inheritance taxes for that matter. However, given the Republican Party's general stance on reducing taxes, ostensibly limiting government intervention in personal finances, and a little something called the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, or the Trump tax cuts, it is basically guaranteed that they would oppose any increases in estate or inheritance taxes. As a reminder, the estate tax threshold was greatly increased and indexed to inflation during the Obama administration, meaning you needed much more money in your estate before the tax would apply, and the 2017 TCJA just took that number, doubled it, kept it indexed to inflation, and slapped an expiration date on it for the end of 2025. This likely signals that a Republican administration, regardless of whether it would have been another Trump ticket or not, would have wanted to just extend what was done with the TCJA if they won the 2024 election. Likely, all this was planned for Trump to have 2 terms in the hope that another Republican would win right after. However, while the Republican Party platform is silent on estate taxes, Project 2025 was not. It proposed making the current higher exemption permanent and reducing the estate tax rate from about 40% to no more than 20%. That would mean fewer estates would be subject to the estate tax, and those that are would face a lower tax rate. I think that no matter how you slice it, increasing the estate tax exemption and lowering the tax rate is a tax that would literally only benefit the uber wealthy. IRS data tells us that only about 0.2% of Americans are subject to the estate tax. That's maybe 4,000 in a year across the entire US. Trump would be subject to it, Nancy Pelosi would be subject to it, Joe Biden, probably not, and with room to spare. The point being that I don't think Republicans are getting any more votes with cutting estate tax revenue, probably a few more donation dollars though. Moving on to capital gains taxes, the Republicans are, to nobody's surprise, especially in light of what I just said, emphasizing making the Trump-era tax cuts permanent, which includes maintaining lower capital gains tax rates. Republicans have pretty consistently opposed increasing capital gains taxes, arguing that such increases would stifle investment and economic growth. Capital gains taxes are taxes that many, if not most Americans, will pay at some point throughout their lives, so it makes sense to address them when it comes to talking tax cuts, especially for the middle class. The platform says Republicans will make permanent the provisions of the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that doubled the standard deduction, expanded the child tax credit, and spurred economic growth for all Americans. No surprises there, and that is the sort of legislation I can see being likely in a potential Trump-Vance administration. However, did you catch that other point? The child tax credit? As a little bonus, let's quickly discuss the child tax credit, since the Republicans made a point to couple it with capital gains taxes, and this is something I didn't mention in our video last week on the Democratic Party's platform. The child tax credit is a tax benefit granted to American taxpayers with children under the age of 17 as of the end of the year. For the 2023 tax year, which is the return filed in 2024, the credit is $2,000 for each qualifying child. Both parties are actually advocating to increase this tax credit. The difference is just by how much. While Trump himself hasn't given any specific figure, only signaling that he would support a generous child tax credit, his VP pick has said he would like to see the credit beefed up to about $5,000 per child, though he would have to see how viable that would be in Congress. Harris, on the other hand, has proposed to restore the 2021 American Rescue Plan Act's enhanced credit of $3,600 per child, which was only in effect for 1 year, as well as create a $6,000 credit for newborns. The source for this is linked in the description below. If you would like me to do some more follow-up videos on other policy plans from either party for things like various taxes, financing, housing policy, etc., then let me know in the comments below. Following the same order as we did with the Democrats, next let's move on to the stepped-up tax basis. As a reminder, the stepped-up tax basis means that when I sell my parents' house after they die, I get to claim the value of the property as of their date of death as the basis for determining capital gains taxes, rather than having to use their initial acquisition value. This applies to other assets such as stocks or bonds, and is a very important strategy for building generational wealth. However, this is another instance where the Republican Party platform is again light on substance. There is no direct reference to the stepped-up tax basis rule in the party's platform. However, we probably don't have to think too hard on what any Republican administration would do here. With the party's general stance on protecting wealth from taxation and reducing tax burdens on transfers of wealth, that would undoubtedly mean opposition to any repeal of the stepped-up tax basis. Finally though, let's talk real estate investing with like-kind exchanges, also known as 1031 exchanges. This is where you can sell one property while purchasing another similar property without paying capital gains taxes on the sale of the first property, so long as it was done under the proper conditions. I have a whole video where I explain the ins and outs of 1031 exchanges, so I'll link to that video in the corner as well as in the description, so you can watch that video after this one for more information. And keeping in theme, there is no specific mention of 1031 or like-kind exchanges with the Republican Party's platform. There is, however, an emphasis on maintaining and extending tax benefits for real estate investment, which suggests support for preserving these types of exchanges. Again, we sort of have to refer back to the party's statement on the 2017 TCJA, saying Republicans will make permanent the provisions of the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and pursue additional tax cuts. Again, generally speaking, the platform's focus on reducing regulations and taxes generally aligns with protecting investment tools like 1031 like-kind exchanges. Due to this, we likely don't have to really divine any intentions here with the Republicans. Overall, the Republican platform strongly advocates for reducing regulations, cutting taxes, and promoting economic growth through various measures, including maintaining the Trump tax cuts, the TCJA. This broader economic stance would likely influence their position on estate planning issues with a focus on minimizing tax liabilities on wealth transfers. For example, and I quote, Republicans will cut costly and burdensome regulations and end Democrats' regulatory onslaught that disproportionately harms lower and middle income households. And again, Project 2025 in theming isn't too far off from here. It advocates for many of the same general principles of the Republican Party as a whole, with an emphasis on advocating for making permanent the provisions of the 2017 TCJA, such as keeping the estate and gift taxes on the upward trajectory they're on, and reducing those tax rates to no more than 20%. I think someone was copying someone else's homework. Although light on policy, nothing too surprising when it comes to what the Republicans are proposing. However, as with the Democratic Party's platform, this is just to set the stage for any future legislation. I plan on doing a follow-up video where I discuss some strategies that will likely be on the table depending on whether we have a Republican or Democrat in the White House next year, as well as a video where we compare each party's platforms directly. But for now, what do you think of the Republicans' 2024 party platform? Surprising? Weird? Exactly what you expected? Is there another category you'd like me to explore? Let me know in the comments below. For now, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, share the video with your dad. I'm attorney Andrew Bethel, and I'll see you at our next meeting.